Hi, and welcome to a small, medium, at large podcast. I'm your host, Gail Hyson, bringing you intimate interviews beyond normal boundaries. I want to thank all of you listeners for liking, subscribing, commenting, sharing, and sticking with us as we start our fifth year of podcasting. Let me tell you something about our special guests today. We have two guests for you. First, we have Ronald Meyer, who bridges the worlds of science, consciousness, and the unexplained. Ron is a published scientist, filmmaker, martial arts master, and paranormal researcher whose experiences span everything from cryptid encounters and out of body experiences to investigating alleged non human intelligence. He is the owner of Center Communications, a film production company, and Ron has produced and directed feature films in Hollywood as well. Recently, he produced Becoming Evil, a #1 streaming documentary series on Amazon Prime about serial killers. Additionally, he is peer-reviewed published scientist with contributions to the fields of behavioral cybernetics and paleontology. He resides in Louisville, Colorado with his wife. In 2023, Center Communications premiered the featured film The Mysteries of Bradshaw Ranch, Aliens, Portals, and the Paranormal, at a conference in Vernal adjacent to the Skinwalker Ranch. During the movie's production, the crew encountered intelligent alien entities and other paranormal phenomena. This documentary film has excellent reviews and a 4.5 of 5-star rating, and it can be viewed on Apple TV, YouTube, Amazon, and Tubi. Our second guest, Mark Reeder, lives in Boulder, Colorado, where he has worked as a writer and associate producer for the video production company Center Communications. His educational programs, Hispanic Achievement in America and Women's Achievement in America, have appeared on PBS national television. He's kicked around the universe long enough to have more than a few bumps and bruises, roughed up and battered like his hat. Mark is still looking for the exit. Mark has a series of books he has written: the Jack Doyle Detective Series, Shadow Loom Series, Ice Age Earth Series. Together with Ron Meyer, they have co-written The High Strangeness of Bradshaw Ranch, The Alien Bigfoot Connection Revisited, and many more. My guests left me this quote from Arthur C. Doyle's Sherlock Holmes: "The world is full of obvious things which no one by any chance ever observes." Let's welcome our guests here today. Hi, Mark. Hi, Ron.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, Gail.
It's really nice to see you, and I'm just really happy to have you on our podcast today. I have a question that applies to both of you, and you can each take a turn answering, which is a question I ask all my guests on their first time here. Is if you could give us each of you give us a little bit about your background when you were growing up in your childhood life, in your family, your home. Did anything occur in that family that supported you on this path today of research and paranormal investigations?
Would you like me to go first?
Please,
Sure.
I grew up in a small Midwestern town, Appleton, Wisconsin,
Oh,
and so did Houdini. And when people from Appleton were on Johnny Carson, they would ask, "Well, what was Houdini's greatest escape?" And it was leaving Appleton, Wisconsin. So I had my first, altered state experience when I was 12 years old. I was taken on my birthday by a guy who was 1 year older than me, and I barely knew him. And he said, "I'm going to take you to this place if you meet me here at my house, and we'll go to this place." And so I thought, why not? And he took me to this ravine that was, beautiful. It was a parallel to the Fox River. And I had my first non-dual experience,
mhm.
which is simply defined that the self disappears and there's just the world. And I've had other ones since then, but that was my introduction to some extent, what everything I've done in some way is what happens and how do we get rid of the self, the doer. And the doer disappeared in that situation. And Mark and I, teach flow practices where people um, lose the self, the doer, and they have that, whatever that is that, people who are lifetime meditators are searching for. It's right there. You don't have to search for it. It's just right there. Whether that, I never told anybody in my family what had happened that morning. It just didn't fit into as Mark likes to say, the zeitgeist of the German community in Appleton, Wisconsin, to talk about such things.
I had a short, I was married to my first husband for 20 years, and he was from Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. So I ended up going to Elkhart Lake in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, many times a year and being immersed with all German families. Everyone that lived there was a German family. That's just the way it was. Farmers.
Did you happen to see Paul Newman racing his car there in Elkhart Lake?
Actually, my husband drove his Jaguar XKE Roadster around the Elkhart Lake Road track, and that was where he had learned to drive. So
Very
didn't
cool.
never saw Paul Newman, but did see the races and did get to go there. Did you ever drive by in Sheboygan? My name was on water tanks there. My father-in-law was they were the inventors of the bread and wrapping machines, meat and bread wrapping machines. And their plant was in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, which is where it began and was built and employed many of the people of Sheboygan back then. It was sold in the 60s, and now I think it's in North Carolina somewhere. I think it's called the Hyson Bemis Company now. And that's how I got to learn about Sheboygan. And beautiful area.
Yeah, I passed by the city a few times, but never saw your name there. I wouldn't have recognized it if I did.
Right. Well, it was an unusual thing for me to see. And it was another lifetime now. I'm not in that lifetime anymore. Anyhow, so I understand what you were saying about, though, not sharing that particular information with your family from Appleton, Wisconsin. And how about you, Mark? What was it like when you were growing up?
Well, I grew up in Sioux City, Iowa, on the banks of the Missouri River. My mom was a concert pianist. My dad was an eye, ear, nose, and throat surgeon. So I
Mm.
was peppered on all sides, either by the arts or by science. I took more to the arts, and which is why I'm now a writer and not operating on people as my dad did. Uh, the thing about me growing up was that I didn't have let me rephrase. I had experiences, but I didn't recognize them as experiences until Ron and I started to talk about them about 15 years ago.
Hmm.
So I can't say that I can't say that I was actually influenced the way Ron described his dual experience, because for me they were just strange things that happened, and in my dad's way of looking at them and my mom's way of looking at, well, strange things happen. There's nothing wrong with that. And so you just kind of catalog them in your memory a little bit, but you don't try to, I'm saying other people do, but I didn't try to interpret them as anything more than, oh, wasn't that weird? Or wasn't that kind of interesting? The one that really got Ron and I talking about my experiences was, um, I had my mom was a concert pianist, but she also taught me how to use a chainsaw. And I mean, she was she was like the greatest mom ever. I mean, seriously.
Yes.
She did a lot of things very well. So my parents had asked me to take down these two trees that were Lombardy poplars that had died. And I kept putting it off and putting it off. But there came a point where I said, okay, I'm going to be doing this. Well, during that time, I was riding my bicycle on this one particular street. And every time I would ride my bicycle on the street, these birds would attack me. I'd be with my friends, and the birds would leave them completely alone, but they would attack me. I mean, seriously, I got to the point where I just didn't want to ride down the street anymore. But a couple of days after that, I took down one of the Lombardy poplars, and there was a bird's nest in it, and it killed all the babies. And
Mm.
then the birds stopped attacking me. Well, at the time, I really did not put two and two together. My mind did not work that way. But that was one of the experiences that I had, that when Ron and I, let's see, I would have been about 13 or 14, so about uh, 50 years later, Ron and I started talking about these things, and uh, realized that, I like to put it this way: wisdom is always out there, and we are aware of it when we're ready. I wasn't ready at age 13, but at age 63 and 64, when Ron and I started talking about it, I went, oh, there's something happening here that I need to investigate for my own sake, and find out what it is that's happening.
Well, that both of these answer what I'm looking for, which is whether, like with you, you knew things were happening that seemed unusual, but there are some families who, if you say that to, they say, "Oh no, not none of that is. Don't ever think about it. Shut that down." And then other families like yours are saying, "Yeah, strange things happen." So it leaves it open for you instead of shutting you
Mhm.
down when you're that age. So I
Yep.
feel like your parents did you a very good service by being open and just letting whatever happens be there and not judging it either way. And
Mhm.
I think that's what that's why it's easy for you to access and remember them because nobody told you to block that out, that it's not a real experience. It's just something different.
Mhm.
So I just find each person's childhoods very fascinating, where some are very, very supported and some are the exact opposite, where they don't tell their parents anything and they discover the things privately on their own. I've seen both of these ways. So I want to find out, when did you both become researchers and investigators into the paranormal, and how long have you been involved in this area?
You mean actually researching
Yes,
or
researching
or,
and
or just or searching
investigating.
spiritually? So I entered a kind of spiritual track, quite early in a way. I would say in the early 80s,
Hmm.
where I got an idea that there was something to pursue there. And but doing actual research really only began like 8 years ago,
Mm,
where I actually started doing something that I could call research. I have a science background, so I had a way of kind of structuring programs,
hmm.
series. The first one was Chasing Bigfoot. Um, but then I went on to do the Bigfoot Alien Connection Revealed, which was a super powerful movie that millions, I think at least 10 million people viewed on the multiple streaming platforms. Made me a lot of money as well.
What was the movie titled?
The Bigfoot Alien Connection Revealed. And I suggested that there were these contact experiences people had, whether they were Bigfoot or some form of, let's say, UAPs or um, something associated from the sky, let's say in general.
Mhm.
Two sides of the same coin in a way, and that's what I was saying. And that these contact experiences had a effect like an altered state experience, if you want to put it that way. They would change people's worldview as to what was possible. Like I
Mhm.
interviewed people that had visuals of Bigfoot that all of a sudden walked into a tree or something like that. And also people who were kids and had a Bigfoot experience but couldn't talk about them. It goes back to what you were talking about before. And for the first time, I said it's okay to talk about these things and it's really cool. And it changed a lot of people's lives from what I gathered from that movie. That movie was really transformational for many, many people. That that there is this connection between different kinds of experiences that you can't explain. And these are external ones, not internal ones primarily.
Mhm.
And that they seem to have something in common, and that is you can't quite explain them. And this goes back to Vallée's hypotheses that there's a mystery remains after you have them. And that's what's fascinating. One aspect that's fascinating about them. And that occurred probably seven years ago, something like that. Um,
So, do you think some things are supposed to be remain as a mystery?
well, all these experiences remain as a mystery. That's the
Uh-huh.
whole kind of theory that we've been working with lately, where I'm really doing scientific stuff, working with Dean Radin. Do you know who he is?
I've worked with Dean since 1998.
So the
Uh,
last thing we did on the CE6 protocol was an experiment designed by him in the field.
mhm,
Because
mhm,
he's been trying to show all the time that somehow or another the human mind or the human being can affect the material world in some way. And that way
he,
might be homostatically where it's interactive,
mhm.
not just stimulus response. It's deeper than that. And so that's kind of where this thing you didn't really want to talk about, which is the hypotheses and the CA6 protocol, where we're doing these experiments. The last one in conjunction with good old Dean.
Oh, well, I do have questions about that a little later in my question list. So we will touch on that. And yes, I'm a co-author on 4 papers with Dean. And I worked at the Institute of Noetic Sciences in the office with him while substituting for a woman who had to take off a few months. So I jumped in and helped out, and we did the a chocolate experiment. We did the experiment with the crystals in water. We did an experiment about cancer. So I can't remember what the fourth one is, but uh, I've learned so much because he puts me in so many different experiments that I don't know what the outcome is, or statistics, or what he's looking for. But I learn that I find that I have other abilities I didn't know I had until he starts telling me to do these different experiments.
So that's what
So
he's saying, is that the human is more than what we normally give the human credit for.
and he's such a respected scientist in the
He's a cool
field,
dude.
and he's also has a great sense of humor.
He's growing potatoes in Idaho now.
Oh, he, you know his book, Supernormal? He has a
No.
book called Supernormal. Well, he has a book called Supernormal. I have all the books right over here. So I'm in his chapter on telepathy. I'm the Gale that he writes about, and
Hmm.
I did a Gansfield experiment for him, and that's in that book,
Yeah, he
in his
moved to, he's
Supernormal.
living now in Idaho.
Yeah, in Boise.
Yeah.
And I just spoke to him. He was just in Malta. He went to Malta for a conference. And
Yeah, he
anyway,
told me that.
yeah, we're in contact. And I did his recent experiment. I don't know if you know about that one, the sigil experiment. Did he talk to you about that?
No, we mostly just talked about what I was doing.
Oh,
And
okay. So this,
you know who Jeffrey Kripal is?
no, I don't. But
He's
this was a box that Dean built. I'll show it to you. And he sent it out to 50 different people around the world. And we were allowed to keep the box. So I kept mine. So here's the little box. And it has a little light thing on here. And he filled it with all these different sensors. And it would connect directly to his computer uh, in Idaho or wherever he is. And you would do these series of sessions, and the object was that you needed to keep the light that was cycling through different colors. You had to, whether it's your intention, your energy, your mind, I'm not exactly sure what is exactly affecting the box, but it will affect the box so that you keep the light white. You didn't want it to be red or purple or blue or the different colors that cycles it through. And I didn't really know how to do it at first. And then after 3 tries, I got an idea about sort of contacting others to sort of help me bring this light. And after that, I had no problem doing this experiment. I did, we did, I think we all had to do a series of 20 of them. And then they became part of statistics. And he got very good results with this. It's called SIGIL, if you want to look it up. And so that was
So
one
so
we just
now
did.
so now you should. I'm interested to see how Mark responds to your question that led you astray
Yes.
by me asking you questions.
Well, what happened for me was that I worked for Ron as his historian and fact checker for um, uh, the thousands of educational videos we did at Center
Wow.
Communication, and helped him write as well as produce some of those educational videos. Worked on many of his documentaries, like History of the American Indian Wars. Uh, Worked on his first serial killer documentary, which there were a whole group of us that worked on it. It wasn't just Ron and me. We had a whole crew working on it, and that was
You got
so
to play a serial killer.
Ron and I had a long, long history together before he asked me to help him write the first book that we've done together on these paranormal experiences. And that was a look at the information that could not be included in the movie, The Alien Bigfoot Connection Revealed. So we took the information that could not be included there and put it into a book called The Alien Bigfoot Connection Revisited. And
Hmm.
Ron asked me to help him with that because we'd worked on so many other projects together, but also because I was a skeptic. I was sort of like the amazing Randy. I wanted to be able to I wanted to be able to scientifically what I would say, and I'll put this in quotes, scientifically explain how these things happen. That it's not a paranormal or a supernatural event. It actually can be explained quite rationally. So Ron brought me for that viewpoint. But the interesting thing was that we had been talking about experiences for many years prior to that. And as we delved into writing this book, I realized that to paraphrase Muad'Dib in the Dune series, where he says there are problems in this universe for which there are no answers. There are things that exist in this universe for which there are no scientific or rational, or what I would say in the box thinking that can be explained. And so that was my introduction to the paranormal world, which I had, I great apologies to Ron, yourself, and others, which I had poo-pooed for years, as many people do. It's easy to say, oh, that's just strange, weird stuff. Get out of, don't talk about it. But one of the things that really struck me in when we were writing the first book was how people who have these experiences change dramatically.
Hmm.
And a lot of times it's for the good. It's like the experience was there, and that's where I came up with the saying, wisdom is always there. You see it when you're ready. And people have these experiences. It's wisdom there's many types of wisdom, but I'm just going to call it as a broader general term. It's a wisdom that affects them personally. It's a wisdom that allows them to see themselves, to change themselves if they want to be changed. It puts them on a
Hmm.
cusp, and they can go either direction. They can either go back to where they were and not and be where the way they were before, or they can change. And this change often is for the better, for themselves, for the people around them, for the planet, for example. And when that happens, amazing things happen to them and the people around them. So whether it's a Bigfoot experience or a UAP or some other experience, like my experience with the bird nest, uh,
Hmm.
when we recognize that, we I believe we step outside of the kind of narcissistic values many of us have, whether it's on the spectrum, whether we're 100% narcissistic or just a little bit. We step outside that spectrum and we look at others in a more altruistic state of mind, and are able to help not only ourselves through that, but our people around us and the entire planet. So that's a very long-winded explanation of what happened with me and Ron in terms of the Bigfoot alien connection revealed and then the follow-up book.
So,
So,
but you also did,
if
well, wait a minute. He skipped his first real investigation, which occurred on Memorial Day weekend, where he went into the field. He may want to talk about that, maybe not.
Well, let's get back, and we can get back to that. But you were talking about what led us to this. So I was looking at the historical perspective from 7 years ago. I was trained as a historian at the University of Cincinnati, so
mhm,
yeah, I've had some interesting experiences. But the historian's always going to be part of me, and it's a very huge part of the many novels that I write. Historical, the history of the world, and really dovetails into many of the novels I write. But Ron's correct. On Memorial Day, Ron had been going in the field for a long time, and he had invited me from time to time to go. But most of his field experience was like at Bradshaw Ranch, where he already had a crew together, and he didn't need me to come down. Or when he went to Mount Shasta in California, he already had a crew together. But this was a local event, and he was talking to me. He said, "Mark, do you want to come along?" And I kind of hemmed and hawed. I kind of liked my role as the skeptic or as the historian, stepping back and helping him write his experiences instead of being a part of them. But I finally
mhm,
said yes, and it was quite amazing to be in this situation with a group. Say there are about 24 of us, and
mhm,
everybody was like-minded. So it's that observer effect. We're all in this experiment that Ron is conducting, and there is nobody in that experiment that's going, "Oh, nothing can possibly happen."
right.
Everybody is on point. And at one point, what was really fascinating to me was that the wind started blowing. And you could explain that. You can explain it in pressure differentiations, in what are known as microbursts, what weather forecasters call microbursts with wind. But this was not what was happening. You could see that the wind was reacting to what was happening in the circle, and the wind was talking to us. And I was like, doesn't anybody realize that the wind is actually talking to us? It's not the wind. I mean, yes, it's the wind, but it's happening when we are all together in a synced moment. And so there was a Navajo shaman there, and I went over and talked with him a little bit about it. And uh, but that was, I would say, that is the that is the primary moment in my life. I'm 75 years old now, and that's a primary moment in my life where I honestly understood everything Ron has been talking about when he talks about the paranormal and people being affected.
Mhm.
I could talk about it and say, yes, I believe this, but I'd never viscerally experienced it till that moment.
So he has
When you
told me this
experience
before.
when you experience that, it makes all the difference in the world with a different
Absolutely.
understanding that you can't. And it's taken me a while for that to not be judgmental when certain people say they've seen or done or experienced certain things. Just because it hasn't happened to you doesn't mean it doesn't happen or that it's not real.
Yeah.
And there's always this thing of everybody wanting to see evidence, evidence, evidence. And that's where my feeling comes in that maybe some things in life are supposed to be left as a mystery. I don't know that everything is supposed to be evidentially proven or scientifically proven. I feel like some things are supposed to be left to the unknown. That's what they're about. I don't know.
Well, that's the
I
difficulty with the scientific box. The scientific
yeah,
box demands that everything have an explanation that fits within the box, but the paranormal doesn't fit within the box, and it's not supposed to. And so for myself personally, like I said, I could intellectually wrap my head around people having these experiences, but I didn't
Hmm.
understand the emotional or the psychological impact of that experience until it happened to me over Memorial Day.
Yes. So that really was that was the real big moment.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so Gail, I haven't heard this before. He didn't tell me because he had to leave right away. That's why I kind of
Oh,
pushed him on it. So, can I
Well,
add one more thing to it? While that was going on,
yes.
so going back to Dean, part of the experiment was he wanted to ask the presence there to show up as a rainbow Bigfoot. And I thought, oh, damn, that's never going to happen. But roughly at the same time, and there was a lot of physical variables we were measuring at the same time going on, that Mark had his
Hmm.
experience. This one guy who's known as Bigfoot Kenny looked to the sky and he saw a cloud formation and said, "There's a Bigfoot up there." And what he was seeing was like the bottom of one leg with the Bigfoot. And he said, "Look at the toes." And so we got the camera on it. And when we zoomed in on it, guess what was inside?
What?
A rainbow.
Oh, just like he said.
And
Uh,
so, in some sense, it kind of shows,
Validation.
huh?
I said that's validation.
Yes, in some sense, it kind of shows that this presence that is quite powerful has a sense of humor and is aware of us. It has a sense of human humor. I mean, isn't that funny? Because that's a
Hmm.
different way of interpreting Bigfoot, not this big creature, but a Bigfoot.
I always find that the Bigfoot phenomenon has been around for a long, I mean, I don't know if that's hundreds of years now or how long that people have been discussing this or if this is something that's been
Oh
talked
no,
about.
it's
well,
been Mark can tell you
Bigfoot
this
is
is
an
part of
archetype.
indigenous cultures everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
The
what I
hairy
figured.
man, the free person,
And
the hairy
Right.
and
woman, the free woman.
yeah, the Bigfoot is also part of the wild man archetype. Joseph Campbell talks about it. Jung talks about it, and it exists for millennia. In We talk about it in the latest book, The High Strangeness of Bigfoot, how in the 15th and 16th centuries there are woodcuts that show the wild man as this archetype that is part of our of who we are as humans, and
Hmm.
that archetype is actually also part of this presence, that this idea of what Jacques Vallée talks about in terms of the control system hypothesis. And because the wild man is that part of us that we want at times to be present, and it's part of that mystery of life. So we look at this in terms of I'm sorry. And Ron, you should jump in here at some point. Ron and I have looked at this at the point that the presence is presenting this mystery to us,
Masquerading
because
as
it keeps
Bigfoot.
us going. It keeps us looking
Hmm.
for, and it keeps the human race evolving. Now, what we're evolving toward is anybody's guess. Though, interestingly enough, in the 21st, as we enter the second quarter of the 21st century, AI is huge in what the human race is evolving toward. But anyway, Ron,
I well,
you've
I
done a
have a
lot more
question
on this than
here.
I have.
Right. So before we go to that, my question is for our listeners who don't know, can you tell us who Jacques Vallée is? And can you explain to our listeners his control system hypothesis? And what is he saying here about UFO encounters?
Well, Jacques Vallée is a French guy. If you saw Close Encounters and the last scene where there's a spaceship and there's a French scientist, the actor is playing Jacques Vallée. He was one of the primary inventors of the internet in its first form called the ARPANET. So
Mhm.
he's done a lot of inventing and he's written tons of books. But his control hypothesis is based on a cybernetic system like a thermostat. You know, you have a thermostat, right? There's a set point,
Yeah.
and if you were in a room and you didn't know what was going on, that you had a something that would heat the room, something that would control the room, and there were sensors that could tell you what was going on outside or what was going on inside. If you needed heat or cold, it would be adjusting all the time, keeping the temperature, the set point the same. Well, if you
Hmm.
look at his hypotheses, the set point is not a temperature, but the amount of mystery that's existing. And so, if you look at the history of pretty much any line of human development, it all depends to some extent on that they thought they knew what they knew, and everything they knew was all you needed to know. And then there's the events would show up, let's say that what well what well, the big one is that you thought the sun rotated around us, right? And so they came up with these mathematical things that even predicted the movement of the planets and so on. But then all of a sudden it became clear that that was just too complicated, and it looked like we actually rotate around the sun. And that changed, you know, a new set point came out of that, because the old one was destroyed. You couldn't talk anymore about, that the sun rotates around us. And so scientifically, that's the easiest one to lineage to follow, because these things upturn everything. Like, nobody knew anything about evolution until what's his name? I forget his name right now.
Darwin.
Darwin suggested a way that there was this process going on, that somehow or another there were these changes, and then there were winners and losers as a result of these changes, and you get a new species. And now that's being challenged. That more than likely it's not about the genes anymore. It's about the fact that animals, since the beginning of time, has modified the environment. They're causative agents, and then the original microbe mats, change the environment, creates the oxygen, and therefore new life forms could come about, and that this whole process like that. So that's also changing the set point. And so the set point that Vallee's control hypothesis points to is the amount of mystery. So if things settle down, it'll produce events that destroy the paradigm of the moment, or as Mark likes to say, the zeitgeist of the moment. And if it goes the other way, people get too wild, it'll make an adjustment in the other direction. And that's how the human race, shall we say, has progressed technologically in every other way. Is that clear enough?
So when you're saying like a thermostat, are you saying that now it has changed in people's views, where they're having a different idea of the possibility that the alien isn't necessarily some gray guy with almond,
No, no, no. That's right.
that there's actually other possibilities of what we're talking about, and
That's
not
the presence.
necessarily.
The way we would put it is the presence masquerading as UAPs,
Hmm.
but it actually has. So it keeps creating these events. And going in terms of what Dean's trying to show is that if there were no human beings to observe it, there would be no UAPs.
Right, because there's nobody there to watch it, right?
Right,
Eh,
because it's the human that are producing it, and they're the ones that would be changed by the event occurring.
mhm.
And we can actually apply this to Bigfoot itself, for example. Uh, the original idea of Bigfoot was that it was some sort of creature that lived in the forests of the Pacific Northwest, for example, and that people would spot it from time to time. And as Ron explored this idea, a new idea came out that, well, it's not actually a flesh and blood creature. It's an interdimensional creature that's able to enter our dimension through portals. Whether it's something like the Einstein-Rosen bridges, or the kind of magnetic portals that Einstein and Rosen talked about, or described. Uh, and then recently, or I would say within the last 5 years, the idea that what Jacques Vallée is saying is that the control system hypothesis, the presence, is there, and this Bigfoot phenomenon is part of this mystery that, as Ron described, humans are, as observers, are are responsible for. And so the set point that Ron was talking about changes from this hairy creature to a new set point of an interdimensional creature to a third set point now, where we're looking at these the Bigfoot phenomenon, but there are others as well, that it has something to do with this whole idea of mystery and how mysteries help the human race evolve from
Mhm.
hunter-gatherers to where we're sitting talking to one another via the internet, a Zoom meeting, and we're Ron's only lives about 15 miles from me, but heck, Gail, you're across the continent, so
Well, yeah, I'm about 1,500 away, I guess,
yeah.
1,500 miles away. Uh, so, uh, see, this is, as I've been pondering a
Hey,
lot
can I
of this
make one
lately.
quick? Can I make
Yes.
one quick? So the set point is actually the amount of mystery. So
Yes.
it's like the 72-degree temperature we all like. And so, what it, if the paradigm becomes too strong, for the understanding, it'll put
Mhm.
forth something that will jack up the mystery. So the sequence of what people thought Bigfoot was, it keeps masquerading in a different form
Hmm.
through three different incarnations, but the set point is always the same. The mystery,
Yes.
same as the temperature is always 72. It's just that different conditions outside um, cause different pieces of equipment to work in, and then if it gets too hot, it'll turn on the air conditioner. If it gets too cold, it'll turn on the heat. But it always maintains this essential temperature set point, and the set point in Valet's case is the amount of mystery we need. We always got to have so much mystery, and he keeps it going there by manifesting as Bigfoot, in these various ways. And in the latest, when we did our first C6 protocol, it manifested as this kind of samurai speech, proto speech. It masqueraded as audio that was like a rhythmic beat because we think that music preceded language. A lot of people do, and language was probably the biggest change ever happening on the planet.
Mhm.
And it also masqueraded as a felt sense by some people there, not everybody, and it masqueraded in some way interacting with one of our electronic devices. And it was never enough to totally grasp it, just enough to keep us going. And so
To keep you interested.
that's the way it works.
Uh, that makes a lot of sense. I'm wondering what you think about. Did you watch Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day? I think it was called, that just came out recently.
No, I was told it wasn't that great.
Well, for someone like me, I found situations in that movie exactly like I experienced them. So I left the movie with kind of my mouth dropping, thinking, "Wow, that's exactly what happens to me." And I just saw this on this film. Uh, I'm just feeling that the public is now maybe that part of this time is opening up more people's minds to being receptive to other possibilities that before maybe they were all filled with fear about. Maybe
Yeah,
some of
absolutely.
these things, just even a movie like E.T., when that came out, took away like the fear of the extraterrestrial, that an extraterrestrial could really be a wonderful experience. And here's the children who recognize it, not the scientists or the people who want to take the ET and, do experiments on him. So it seems to me that from what I'm seeing with all the podcasts, and you're about my 128th show or so, I've had quite a few people share their experiences firsthand of interacting with interdimensional beings. That seems to be a popular term now more than the word alien. And I've had them, I had one gentleman and another woman. I don't know if you've discovered this a lot, where people in near death or in situations of they're dying, they die, they come back.
Yeah.
Some,
I did
yes.
a whole movie that just came out. I can send you a link on
Oh,
near-death
great.
experiences.
And
So,
that,
so can I just interrupt?
yeah.
You wanted to talk about Bradshaw Ranch. We don't have a lot of time. I don't know if you still want to go there or not.
Yes, oh, definitely want to go to the Bradshaw Ranch. Oh, and I've got about 15 questions we haven't answered.
Yeah, I know. So I took you down this path, even though you didn't want to go there. So I'm sorry about
Yes, that's okay. So, like, here's I have PMH Atwater. Do you know her?
that. Sure, I do.
Yes.
She's in my movie on
Sh
near-death experiences.
yes, she is, that's where she is right now. She's just entered hospice. And
Oh,
her and
really?
I, yeah, her and I have been communicating all this last week together. And I'm just showing our listeners, if anyone's interested in her latest book that just came out. She's, even though she's just entered hospice and she's, dealing with this, she said she'd still really love to write another book. So she'll see how it goes. But she
Can I
has,
tell you a story about that? About her?
yes, she's
So,
a wonderful woman.
yeah, I don't know if she remembers me or not, but I did this interview with her. But
Hmm.
this ties into Bradshaw Ranch. So one evening we were supposed to be out there at 7 o'clock, but the guy who had studied was out there at Bradshaw Ranch with Linda Bradshaw in the 90s. And he said, be there at 7 o'clock. And it takes, from the main paved highway, it takes 30 minutes to get there almost exactly. And if you just stay on the ground, a certain unpaved road and don't turn off anywhere, you'll get there in 30 minutes. And so at 6:30, our guide for Bradshaw Ranch, I texted him and say, come and join us in our vehicle. And he hopped in and we started driving. And after a while, we're like, what's that over there? There's a building over there. We don't know what that is. And we were all in this kind of altered state of consciousness when things just didn't seem right. They seemed out of skewed up or something like that. And we were just lost. How could we can't get lost. You just drive straight. And it was really weird. And all of us felt the same thing. We almost drove off a ledge. And then all of a sudden we were on the main road and we got there at exactly 7 o'clock on time. And we looked at our GPS and it was like a spaghetti thing how we were driving. And that's the classic time slip, right? It was a half hour driving to nowhere. And so I told PMH that experience. And she said to me, oh, I can control that. There's a third book I got to write. I'll just write that with my extra time. And that's the book you just held up.
Oh, that's wonderful. So you're getting to see that
And
uh
that wasn't that long ago that she hadn't written this book.
mhm.
She said that, when she had her initial near-death experience, she said somehow she was told she had to write 3 books. And so this was the third one she had to write. And she said she'd do that through a time slip.
Both her and I had near-death experiences the exact same year. We have a lot of funny things in common, her and I, that I found very interesting when we were sharing our life together. I have another guest that I had. She was on my show, by the way, if you want to see it. She's on my podcast, and some of her
Hey,
followers.
Gail,
Yeah.
Gail, I gotta let my dog out right now.
Okay, let me pause you for one
Or
sec.
you can talk to Mark.
Okay, Mark, hop on in. So,
Well,
Mark,
I've never had a near-death experience, and my only connection with them is working with Ron. Uh, one of the wonderful things about Ron and my relationship is that we go to coffee houses and we just talk about things. And the subject is wide ranging because of his scientific background, but also because of his paranormal experiences. So we might be talking about fossils for 5 or 10 minutes, and then we're talking about near-death experiences, and then we're talking about UAPs, back to fossils, back to the observer effect in terms of how observers affect what's being observed. So we have this wonderful relationship in terms of just bouncing ideas off one another. And Ron is talking about these near-death experiences and having a lot of fun. Uh, uh, I'm sorry, I'm having a lot of fun listening to him because I'd never had any, I had no idea what a near-death experience was, but he's talking to all these individuals who have. And it dawned on me that a lot of it comes back to the same thing. People have these near-death experiences and they're profoundly affected by them. And usually for the better. Something in them, it's that wisdom thing again. They are suddenly open to a wisdom that affects them directly.
And it
And
often takes them a long time to share that story.
yes,
They
yeah.
don't, they it really, I try to have, that's what I like to share on this podcast is people's experiences and stories. And some of them have never said them out to other people before. And it's
Mhm.
such a wonderful thing to be able to
Yeah.
share because each person then learns. And when they hear something, that might open that person up to be able to share their story that they've been afraid to talk about.
And that
And
dovetails, I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, that dovetails back into what something you mentioned earlier about more people being involved. 100 years
Mhm.
ago, these experiences were limited to people like Edgar Cayce, for example, or Houdini, and these people were celebrities. And but nobody else would talk about them. Now, with the advent of the internet and the fact that you have a podcast, for example, and there are other people as well who have podcasts, and then Ron's movies that he makes and the books that he and I write, these experiences are open for so many more people. And more
Exactly.
people are saying, well, I had an experience like that. And so the consciousness of the paranormal is growing. And I'm going to go back to that box, that scientific box that the scientists want everything to be explained by.
Hmm.
That can't contain the paranormal. There's a paranormal way of understanding things that is outside that box and very important for us. And as
Yes.
the internet allows us to spread the word, it becomes a catalyst for understanding our universe, the earth, and ourselves much to a greater degree.
Dean Radin and Russell Targ are definitely the men who taught me that time is not the way we see it.
Hmm.
And once I understood that by doing precognitive remote viewing, which
Hmm.
is, drawing something that has not even been selected in the future, it hasn't even been picked yet. How
Hmm.
can you do that if that doesn't even make sense? How can I draw something that the computer hasn't even picked yet? It be an accurate drawing, but it hasn't even happened.
Right.
And when I would do, and they would say to me, "Oh, you can do this." I never did this before. How can I do this? But every experiment, I heard Dean talk about me on a show, and he said, Gail is what we call the ideal subject. We invite her into the lab, we tell her what to do, and she just does it. We don't know how, but she just does it. And I've never cared how. So that part of investigating, or I don't have a scientific mind like that. I just experience what happens and I just accept it that that's what happened. But I also am very skeptical when I was told that Russell told me that I could do psychokinesis or telekinesis. I was like, how could I do that? I don't know that I could do this sort of thing. They said, oh, you can do this. I said, I don't know how to do this. But they were right. I could do this. And I have I don't know if you can see it back there, but it's a long bell jar with a twirling paper in it. And I can keep that paper moving. The last time I was able to do it for almost 30 straight minutes, being at a distance, not touching anything, just having the sealed paper in a jar. And I did not know that I could affect an object without touching it, but they taught me this. So they've taught me so many things by making me not making me, but by asking me to participate in these different experiments.
Mhm.
So I'm really grateful for all their research and for them, so whatever data they need to gather, I know I give them very good data, but I never understand anything about that. I just learn about ways that it turns out I know I'm functioning, that I can do, that I didn't know I could.
Mhm.
So I'm very, very grateful for that. So what I would like to do, since we're moving around here, is I would like to just focus a bit on the Bradshaw Ranch, your documentary. And I also wanted to know, why do they, is it the TV show or who listed that as horror? I couldn't believe that it was considered, it said, when it tells you what the thing is about. Like to me, that was not horror. Why would they write that like that on a
Who's
TV
they?
show? The TV, when you go up and it tells you the show and you read the title and it says, how many minutes and all that, then underneath that, it puts in, comedy, drama, like that. It
Right.
says
What
those things.
platform?
We watched it on, my husband controls the TV, so I'm not sure, but I think it was Apple. I can't even turn my own TV on anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not a techie person. I didn't even go through high school. I'm not a highly educated intellectual, but I've lived a lot of
Oh,
life.
there's a quick answer. There's a quick answer. Search engine optimization. Get as many eyeballs as you can.
Uh-huh.
Everything is driven by that. When and Amazon may use it different. They may not, if you watch YouTube and their description may not contain it. It's whatever, the bots, the
Right.
AI
And I
think
didn't,
is going to get the maximum eyeballs on it.
Mhm.
well, I thought it was a very well done documentary, and I did not
Thank
think
you.
that title belonged on there. And I wanted to ask you some
Because
things
they're
about it.
they're in the business of making money by selling advertising or subscriptions or whatever. They don't give a shit about what's in the content. You follow me?
Yes, because some of my experiences I've been asked to be in certain films with, and it was that they wanted to distort and turn it into something that it wasn't, and I didn't want to do that with my
Okay.
experiences.
Is
So
is that clear? They're just trying to get eyeballs.
yeah, they just want to, right, they want what sells. You know, to me, the truth is more important than than horror, but that's beside the point. So could you tell our listeners, either one of you, whoever wants to, what is this documentary that you made? What is this Bradshaw Ranch, which I'd never heard about until this week and went and watched it after I connected with you? And if you could tell us what what you learned after you completed this film about this place, and that is there any strong, indisputable evidence from your research and investigation there at that site that you can share with our audience?
Well, it was a very large ranch at one time,
Hmm.
working ranch. It follows the pattern to some extent at Skinwalker Ranch in that there's an adobe building, an original homestead building. The other thing I got going to it, it's as the crow flies, it's probably 8, 9 miles from Sedona. Sedona is really one of the paranormal hotspots on the planet, right?
Hmm.
So it shares every bit of history that Sedona does. Um, vortexes and all that sort of stuff. And for a long time, it was the place where Hollywood shot cowboy movies. It looked right. John Wayne, Elvis Presley, all these people shot movies. And once that, they moved beyond that type of look, in filmmaking. It became something of a dude ranch. And it became a dude ranch where people would come, ride horses and stay there. There's a main house too. There's three main structures, and the third one is a windmill because they had to pump water. And that forms a triangle, kind of like Skinwalker Ranch, the triangle.
Hmm.
And it was in the 90s when Tom Dongo and Lynn Bradshaw started recording all these weird paranormal stuff and found weird footprints and a whole bunch of paranormal stuff. And then at the turn of the century or after, the government bought it, our government.
Do they still own it?
They still own it. We own it.
Oh,
And it was supposedly it was set up to study the effects of climate change on native plants of the area. Now that sounds suspicious in itself, doesn't it?
Yes.
First of all, since it was a ranch for so long, there were very few native plants, because they're not exactly what a horse would want to eat. There is a weather station, about abandoned weather station. They're fairly complex, that measures a lot of variables of the environment. It's still existing there. When we went there, there was some very sophisticated equipment left there. Who knows who used it? And so they fenced it off. They probably being the government.
Hmm.
And a lot of stories and rumors grew up around it, that there was weird shit going on there, and people would take drives, but they wouldn't go near it. And so, and they talked about, military trucks and all that, everything you'd want to create a good story.
Hmm.
But eventually, people figured out that all you had to do was lift up the fence, and you could go into the complex.
Oh, so how did you get in? Is that how you got
Well,
in there?
that's how we got in.
Oh, so you did all the filming and you didn't have to ask for permission or anything?
No, not that's true. Although recently, I got as a right result of Doge. You know what Doge is? What's his name? What's his name, Mark? The guy who
Elon Musk?
Elon Musk, cleaned up all that stuff, and we got a note from the Forest Service said, "We know you like to film on government property. Feel free to do as much of it as you want. You don't have to get any more permissions."
Oh, that's
So in
wonderful.
retrospect, what the heck?
Well, because after I watched your film, I wanted to go there. And then I thought to myself, well, how do you do that? And I didn't, after saying it was all fenced in, I figured that you only got there by special permission.
No, so no permission. Um, of course, there's graffiti all over the place, and especially in the main building and the Adobe building. So people
Hmm.
have been there, a lot. Everybody figured out how to get in. Um, Unlike Skinwalker Ranch, I felt really good there. I felt safe. I was there on three different occasions in the sense of, you know, different times of the year.
Hmm.
Most recent one was in April. Um,
And did you see or feel or sense anything different each time or when you
no, it
went
always
there?
felt, it always felt good to me. There's this
Hmm.
place where everybody said the portal was, which was kind of between not kind, it was between the Adobe building and the main building. And it was easy to pinpoint. One a psychic that I knew that told me about how you get in. She was
Hmm.
there on the second time we went, and she was able to walk right to it, and you feel like crap for some reason. It was explained to us by somebody who understands these things that if it is interdimensional or in some way that our biology doesn't work well in that spot, and that's
Hmm.
why I felt like my weak spot was my shoulders, and I felt a lot of pain there. Other people were sick
Hmm.
in bed for half a day. I don't know why we kept going in there.
Something kept bringing you back there.
Yeah,
And so
but
I,
the thing, and I know we don't have a lot of time, but the thing that was coolest for me is we have gotten an SLS camera, which creates these kind of stick figures. It searches for human type stick figures. Did you see that in the movie?
yes, and I had questions about that because I'd never seen that before. My husband's a computer scientist, and he was sort of trying to explain to me about heat and
Right, so it was developed by Microsoft, for their gaming, and they thought
uh-huh.
that if we developed the programming to recognize a human figure, because we're hotter than we're hot, compared to
Yes.
the environment, it would then recognize that you could do hands-free controlling. You wouldn't have to grab anything, and it worked, but it wasn't. People didn't like it. So some people got the idea, well, we can take that technology and reverse it and go searching in space to find human-like figures or any kind of thing kind of like human, and it will, we can see things that you can't see with the eye.
That so I saw the in the film, I saw how first you show the demonstration with a regular human person, and
Yeah,
she's moving like this, and the dots and the lines are moving with her. But then when you put it in a area in the bread
main
at the
building.
ranch, yeah, in the building, and this image started coming up of the same thing, these dots and these lines. My first question was, are those interdimensional beings, or could they be spirits? Are they disembodied souls? Or how do we know? I couldn't believe what I was seeing, so I was trying to understand what is it that's happening when you're having this facing an empty, blank, invisible space. How are these, what is showing up?
I haven't the faintest. At the same time, this guy had this large magnetometer that was measuring the magnetic field, and it was going crazy when that thing. And what was most interesting to me is I have a green light laser. Remember that?
No.
And it was sitting in the chair, and I took the laser and poked it at its
Oh,
foot,
yes. Yeah.
and it was sitting here, and it amazed me. It looked down at its foot, and then kicked the damn laser.
I saw that, and that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
understand.
So it showed something. It showed awareness, didn't it?
Yes, it
It
showed that
showed
something was
what was
reacting
going
to
on.
you.
Yeah, it's all the laser and kicked it. I mean, that's about as good as you can get, wasn't it? I don't know what it was.
And then also the way it entered and where it appeared and disappeared was not like a regular form.
No.
Just
And at one point we had a Tesla coil, like 30 feet away, and the thing span to the computer to the Tesla coil.
so you're seeing, so these instruments are showing something is going on in that space. It can't be denied by scientists because these are scientific instruments. Is that
That's
correct?
right. Yeah. And so it creates more mystery, doesn't it? You ask all the questions that everybody asks. What in the heck was that?
What a fun job you two men have. Uh, so
It might have been
I,
you for all I know.
so I want to get into just one other thing that we didn't get to talk about, but I believe it's when I looked it up because I really did never heard that word before. I think I'm saying it correctly. Is it cryptid? C-R,
Oh,
uh,
cryptids?
yeah, cryptid. Is that
Yeah.
how you say that?
It's a general name for creatures like Bigfoot.
And for when I opened it up on the internet and I saw all these different pictures of the wolves, they're all different archetypal images that people have
That's right.
expressed. That's what that
Yeah,
cryptid,
and they're all kind of animal based in some sense.
and
Mhm.
they're all animal based. Uh, um, my husband and I were at a peyote ceremony at 10,000 feet elevation in the mountains of Mexico with the Huichols, and he was eating the peyote, I wasn't. And we were laying in our adobe hut with the door open, and he had an entire experience of a wolf appearing, had this whole experience with the wolf. He told the Huichols later about it, and they let him know that there were actually no wolves actually roaming around there. And I said to him, "This is your animal that has come that came to greet you like a spirit guide." I think sometimes people's, it can be a dog or it can be something, like you say, a Bigfoot, but I do really believe that animal animal spirits or whatever connect to people. I also
So
believe,
Marx has a close relationship with the Thunderbird.
oh, do you, Mark? Can you tell us about that?
Well, I think Ron's exaggerating a little bit. I don't know how close it is, but um, I had an unusual experience where I was driving in the Cascade Mountains in Washington, and um, uh, I glanced up and I saw this giant thunderbird above us. And I'm a little bit familiar with some of the Lakota uh, traditions concerning thunderbirds, and this could be actually quite a Thunderbird can actually be detrimental to you as well as helpful. I mean, it can go either way. And I'm fixated on this Thunderbird, and I'm like, we're going up into the Cascade Mountains, and this thing is right over us. What does it mean? And I turn to all of my friends and I say, there, you know, there's a Thunderbird traveling above us. And they all look up and they don't see anything. And I'm like, I'm telling you guys, I'm not making this up. And fortunately, my friends did rib me a little bit, but they didn't say you're absolutely insane. They just ribbed me a little bit. And later on, my mind tried to make sense of it, so it turned it into a jet, into like a commercial passenger jet. And I was able to say, oh, okay, that I was just fooling myself here. It wasn't that at all. So to me, whether it's a Thunderbird or Bigfoot or something, the getting back to Ron's point, this is all part of the mystery.
Mhm.
That this was 40 years ago when this happened to me, and so I wasn't into the mystery then. As soon as my mind was able to say, "Oh, it was a commercial jetliner," it went, "Oh, wasn't that an interesting experience?" And it isn't until I started talking with Ron about these experiences that I realized, and I mentioned this twice already, so I get to mention it three times. Wisdom knocks at our door all the time, and there are lots of times when we just don't open it. But your husband takes the peyote, wisdom knocks at the door, and he sees the wolf. It's his spirit guide, and he's there. He can recognize it. He can see it. And so wisdom speaking to him at that moment, he gets to benefit from it.
Exactly. And in his scientific mind, he kept trying to figure out how could that be? How- And I'm not of that, and I'm like, that was there. I said, I'm sure of it. I said, and I believe that that will protect you, and that's your animal.
Mhm.
I I I have a question that I don't know if you guys have thought about this, being the scientist that you are. What happens with telepathy? Because it dawned on me now after having two different, three different situations in life where I was in cultures that I do not speak a word of their language, the Huichol, Mongolian, and Japanese. And I'm in situations and I know we are completely communicating telepathically, but I don't speak their language and they don't speak my language. But how are we doing this? Now, when Zagda, the Mongolian shaman, came to my home from Mongolia and said, "You have to be turned into a shaman because I see spirits around you." We had no English translator and we conducted a 9-hour ceremony and 6 days of preparation. And all she would do is think about the thing and then I would appear with it. And when a filmmaker came from Mongolia to talk with us, he asked her, and that was the only time I got to have an English translation. And she said, well, I would think about a certain herb I wanted for the ceremony, and then Gail would just appear in my mind, she said, and I would say it to her, and then she would bring it in. So that is actually what happened. But how does that communication, if I didn't happen with so many different cultures now that we communicate telepathically, but we're not using the same language, how are we communicating? That's a mystery to me.
You want
There's
me to give you
some,
the answer?
what's the
At
answer?
least a good answer?
Okay, I'll take any answer.
Okay. So the boundaries right now that we are holding between you, me, and Mark
Yeah,
are an illusion.
right.
We're actually all one. The way I begin the C6 protocol is what I call the Namaste practice.
Hmm.
And I look at you and you look at me right now. Look at me. Look at my
Hmm.
eyes. Can you do that? Just look.
I, I'm looking.
And so eventually I will recognize that the God in you is aware of the God in me and vice versa,
Hmm.
or the source.
Hmm.
And when these boundaries dissolve, we learn the truth of that these boundaries we create, our ego, are not real. I mean, we need them to kick around, but they're not real. We all come from,
Ex-
we're all the same source,
mhm.
the same God, whatever term. So that's that's kind of the point of the CE6 protocol is that we dissolve the boundaries through that, and we are one mind,
That's
and
what
that
that
the presence likes to manifest and interact with that because each of us at that particular case is kind of lost who we the Ronness or the Gailness or the Markness, and that's how it interacts with us. And it's so simple.
that is the best answer. I have posed this question numerous times. That is the first time I've gotten this answer. And that's the one that makes absolute sense. Because if we dissolve away our brain and body and all the things that we attach that we ego or thinks that's what's really real, we actually go to what's this is like maybe a dream we're living in, and we end up going to source there is real, of course we could connect to anyone in any culture or in any place and communicate
That's right.
because we are one. I'm back to
Yes.
Woodstock again.
I mean, all the religions point to that all the time.
Yes, uh, very excellent point. So thank you so much. I really appreciated that. That has really answered my question. Thank you. So I'm just going to quickly run through here. I think we've covered almost everything. I nutritional information, sensing people, feelings fun. Okay, gray eyes, and circles is the bias. Okay. I wondered also, besides Barbara Lamb and PMH Atwater, have you ever heard of Michael Sillig and his book Hush?
No.
Well, it's a 900 page book or 600 pages or something. It's a very huge book, but he writes a fiction book that's based on. He was a jet Navy pilot, fighter pilot, and he writes about the experiences of uh, much of it is real information, but he writes it as a fiction novel because he didn't think that he could really let all of that out. And I guess there's a lot of that also where people, like I have a guest who was in a horrific accident and he wrote this book, but he wrote it as fiction. And he was left a paraplegic and he died many times. And he is now speaking about the interactions he had with different beings during those death times. And he sent me a painting after he was my guest of an image of something that he saw during his death experiences. And and a lot of people that I've spoke to that have had these really intense experiences all credit some being coming in during that time of death. And they don't describe it as a being like, a family member who comes in spirit. They all describe it as an energy that is not a human energy that comes and helps heal them during that time. And I was just wondering if you've seen or known of anything like that, and that'll be my last question.
So I'll send you the link to my movie, and if that'll answer most of your questions because I got a variety of people from their near-death experiences, and,
Hmm.
and I would say the only thing that's really two things that are common. They never find hell, and they
Hmm.
all come away knowing they're immortal. But
Yeah.
otherwise, they vary totally. So when you said they all experience beings, that's just not true.
Hmm.
I mean, in terms of what people report, of course, trying to put in language which can't be put into words. Um,
Right. It's a very,
because the one thing that's shut down during that is there's no language. There's consciousness, that where everything shows up, right now where you're hearing my voice and you're looking
mhm,
at some stuff and maybe you have an itch in your butt or something. All that's appearing in consciousness or awareness. Um, and you don't do consciousness. That's really the essence of who you really are in some sense. We all are. It's the same thing in a certain sense. And so when they go into this near-death experience, language is shut down, but consciousness survives, is there. There's it's still an experience that occurs in that space. And Mark and I teach flow practice, where we get people into that state, and you get rid of the doer and the ego and all that. And from the outside, it looks like things are just going perfectly. From the inside, it's not describable in words, right, Mark?
Well, this is very true because the barrier of language goes away.
mhm,
And when the barrier of language goes away, all you have left is the flow state. And all these wonderful things happen. I want to touch on that just for a second because if we are hunter-gatherers 100,000 years ago before the human species developed language, how do you think these clans operated? They weren't saying to each other, "Oh, there's a herd of buffalo over there. Let's go over and hunt them." Or, there's a woolly mammoth that we've got to be we're aware of. No, they communicated and I'm going to use your term, telepathically. They
mhm,
communicated in a very different way. Maybe it's a combination of gestures and mind linking of some kind, but this was their communication. But somewhere along the lines, humans opted to speak. Maybe it started with drumming, which is an autoregressive
mhm.
nature of things developing. Maybe it started with drumming and then with music, but at some point along the line, humans developed language. And what did language do immediately? It created a barrier because language allowed us to create a story in our head all the time and tell us what was going on around us. So
Mhm.
language separated us from members of our clan, but it not only separated us from members of our clan, it separated us from other clans. And suddenly you have groups that are consider themselves different or other. This shuts down the telepathic bond that any humans might have, this language barrier. You just don't have that. I'm sorry, Gail, but you don't have that language barrier to the degree that so many of the others of us do. So
Mhm.
telepathically, given what Ron told you about, makes
Yes,
great sense.
it really does. I feel I've got my answer now. I always hope that at least one of my listeners gets something important out of the show, but I'm really getting something important out of it right now. So I want to say how much I'm happy to have my answer for this. That was
So, I
really,
mean, but you can watch, like a pack of lions or wolves work together to do a prey, and they're communicating without
hmm
language, right? It seems like
hmm
they know they're not doing a wink and a nod and to each other. You go over there.
But you know how
You know,
the Native Americans say you can control the wind and you can call the wind to come. So one day I decided to try that because I thought, oh, come on, you can't call the wind. And I went up to a mountaintop and over and over again, I could have this relationship at that moment with the wind. When I could say, I'm calling the wind now, the wind would come up. And it was, I only tried it once, but I said to myself, oh, now I understand what they're talking about. You can call the wind. It's really having the experience for me. I don't believe it. I didn't believe in spoon bending when I heard about spoon bending. But then when I started bending spoons and forks, I said, "Oh wow, it is real." So I'm sort of, I don't like accept everything. Oh yeah, that's for. But when I experience it, my only answer is I can only say to someone, I just know. I can't give you an explanation. I just maybe know this. That's all. You were talking about Jacques Vallée, and before we sign off, and I want to get your words of wisdom. I just want to share one other thing. I've seen him speak a few times, and he used to come to my husband's uh, company that was called Interval Research. They were doing secret research for Paul Allen. He had set up this think tank, and that's how I met Russell Targ and Dean Radin, because all these people were in this place. And Russell and I started doing some other remote viewings in this last couple of years, nothing to do with that. And we were doing objects, and he was holding objects on his desk in Palo Alto, and here in Sebastopol, I would draw and show him what it was. So at the end of it, he said, "I have one thing that I have a request." He said, "This one's not an object, and it's a photograph." And he said, "But I was wondering if you could remote view it." And when he first talked to me, I said, "Oh, wow, there's a lot of vegetation in this picture." And he said, "Oh, no, let me stop you right there. We took all the vegetation out of the picture. There was vegetation there, but there's none there now." He said, "But go on, what do you see?" And the first thing I saw was a rocket ship. And I said, "Jet propulsion." And he said to me, "Gail, I've known you for 20 something years. I've never heard you say jet propulsion in your life." And I started to draw, and I drew all these different, well, it's hard for you to see, but they're different circular, like energy field things. And I can't draw well, but I write next to it what it is so they'll understand. And then he shows me the picture, and it's this. It's a UAP. And Jacques Vallée had sent him this picture because they're very good friends and told him that I don't think anyone can remote view this because it's interdimensional. So I'm not sure why that was thought of, but I had no trouble remote viewing it in a minute. And so he sent back the information to Jacques to let him know that yes, it can be remote viewed. And the only thing he knew about it was that it was a well documented Canadian photo. So I'm not sure if either of you had ever seen this before. It's a jet fighter pilot that's below it, that's in this part of the scene. And I guess that was the little bit of vegetation that was left before it was all taken out of the picture. And when I wrote that it's all just black and white, I said there was no color or anything in this photo, but I felt a tremendous amount of energy in it, a circular like force like this going and going and going. And I was wondering whether any of you had ever done anything with any experiments like that in your research, where people remote viewed or did anything like that with these kinds of things, ultra interdimensional or UAPs or anything like that.
Not for
Have I
myself.
ever dealt with remote viewers? Yes.
Did they come up with these connections to interdimensional beings or
Um, uh, part of a movie I did was a remote viewer was uh, was to draw. We were going to take her someplace special.
Mhm.
She was gonna she do a bunch of stuff to that she saw where we were going but didn't know. And we took her to Skinwalker Ranch. She nailed it pretty good. She didn't know anything about Skinwalker Ranch.
Mhm.
So that was the only
So,
time I really filmed anything like that, in a way that was besides, just people telling me stories.
right.
Um,
So she had no trouble then connecting into that energy at all either.
that's it was pretty good.
Hmm.
She actually said that there was a presence there that was sad and didn't like being poked, like that's the way they approach Skinwalker, poking the bear or the hornet's nest or some damn thing like that.
Hmm.
That's not my approach. I want to interact with them, with the whatever. So it just fucks with them and creates more mystery. But that
So
wasn't.
is there any particular films you want to mention or books you want to mention to our listeners that they might want to check out that you might tell about right now?
So the High Strangeness of Bigfoot, you can find it on YouTube
Hmm.
and by the same name. You can find a book on Amazon or Barnes and Noble by the same title,
Okay.
and that would be great. Mark, you want to
Wonderful.
push anything?
Mark,
I'm
is there
sorry.
anything you want to tell our audience that they might want to look up or read that you've done?
Well, um, I mean, my books are available at Amazon, so if they want to go to my author's page, they can find the what I'm really interested right now. I mean, I write Jack Doyle. He's a paranormal detective, and it's a and that's a fun. That's just a fun one. But the series I'm writing right now is my Ice Age Earth series, which is an environmental uh, novel set of novels where and it's a cautionary tale about what can happen to us if we don't start being caretakers of the planet instead of just exploiting its resources. So people who are interested in a novel that approaches that idea and looks at the consequences of it, I think they would find that interesting. And I'm just now finishing the last, it's a three-book series, and I'm just now finishing the last book in that series.
Well, I'm going to definitely get some of these because I love detective type work. And I just could not believe how many books were here on the list. So for the audience, there are many, many books there because there's series of them. And I think I guess just type in the name, go on Amazon, and you'll find books by both of these gentlemen. So here's where I get ready to sign off, but before we do, I ask if either of you have any words of wisdom or anything that you'd like to impart with anyone as your last closing on the show.
Let go, let
That's,
go.
Hmm.
and in letting go, wisdom will appear.
Beautiful.
And
Well,
don't go searching for what you already have,
Yeah.
which is that godlike thing that we talked about earlier. It's right there.
source.
Don't step out of it and go searching for it.
Hmm. It's excellent wisdom. And Mark, anything else you want to add?
No, I think Ron's pretty much covered everything.
Okay. Well, Ron, Mark, I want to thank you so much for joining us here today on a small, medium, at large podcast. I want to thank all you listeners for liking, subscribing, sharing, and know that you can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and all other social media sites. Remember to share your stories because stories can heal. And have a really, really wonderful week. And we'll see you again soon. And have a very, very, very happy day.